You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. Today, I have Meredith Brick on the show, and she is actually a sister-in-law to Jamie Donnelly, who has been on the show. He is the head coach for Ozark. Meredith, I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to sitting down and having this conversation with you.
And Meredith was actually, for one of my kids, okay, let me backtrack. So Meredith is a athletic mental performance coach for, obviously, athletes. And she was for one of my kids through a sports season. And I said, Meredith, we got to have you on. So we're actually going to dive into the world of mental performance and how our thoughts, habits, and our brain's natural wiring can either limit us or launch us toward our best potential. So we're going to break down practical tools like mental training, reset routines, and the power of self-talk to help you not only perform better, but live with more intention and resilience. And just because she is specifically athletic, this will translate across the board. It will translate into your work life. It'll translate into your, just if you're somebody who is big on, always looking to be able to do better and mindset and stuff. It is not just for athletics. So if you're a parent of an athlete, if you are not a parent of an athlete and you just are living your best life, this is for you. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you're doing. This is for anybody. So let's talk, Meredith, about mental training. So mental training is recognizing your thoughts, emotions, redirecting your focus. So tell me about that, like recognizing your thoughts. What would that be?
Well, to me, as a mental performance coach and as a high performer, you mentioned you don't have to be an athlete. In my opinion, anytime you're going to perform in any regard, even getting ready for this conversation, I was taking some deep breaths, Anytime you're getting ready to perform, you can do some practical tools, but it takes intention. So, mental performance is a way to bring intention to what you need to do. And also in a world where we are in our screens, I think having self-awareness is a superpower. And really the work that I do with athletes and clients of all ages is just giving them tools to help build their own self-awareness so that they can become their own coach in a way. Mm-hmm. I help athletes and clients. I'm a guide along the way. I help walk with them and help give them the tools so that they can springboard into being their own sufficient self. Whenever those tough times come up, they can lean into that training and those tools to be resilient.
Yeah, no, that's so good. And I love that you say self-awareness because I think some people, whenever we talk about self-awareness and really reflecting on what are our pain points, what are some things that we can be working on, I think it's hard for some people, especially when you have that self-critical mind and you're not used to being self-aware and focusing on that. It can feel uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. It can feel like you want to run from it. And it can also make people feel like I'm weak and then beat themselves up. But it's actually exactly what you said. It is a superpower. Mm-hmm. And it is something that so many people are, if we could see it as a superpower, I feel like we would have better relationships, better communication, better. So thank you for saying it's a superpower and normalizing like, hey, this is a good thing. Although uncomfortable, yes, this is a good thing. So, okay, how can we recognize our thoughts?
I think the first step for me, and I guess let me back up a little bit in my journey, because as in the work that I do, I can't expect other people to do this really intense, uncomfortable inner work if I'm not willing to do it myself, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for me, what really started my journey was journaling. Mm-hmm. And, I was able to just really dump my thoughts on the page, reflect, but also write things I wouldn't tell other people that was really intimate to me, but also be able to write down my dreams and my unlived life. And I think for me, when I started my process with journaling, which at this point has been a decade ago, I have journals and journals and journals full of my thoughts. And when I discovered how much more clear I became when I was able to use that tool, I knew that this was something that worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but I think that, for me, that's always one of the first tools that I recommend is just writing your thoughts down on paper. All of the tools that I recommend and teach people are super simple. Writing things down on paper, seeing images in your mind, stopping to take a deep breath. Like, it's nothing earth-shattering, but the hard part of it is applying it when it's needed and consistently. So, anything to build that self-awareness. I think another a way to start recognizing your thoughts is just acknowledge that there's a conversation going in your head all the time. And I like to use the term your heroic self and your lesser self. There's always this battle between these two ideas. And I always use the example of running because I'm not a runner, that's how I identify anyway. I was a goalkeeper when I played soccer, so I was really smart and I didn't have to run very much. But anytime I'm running, or if you're doing any sort of workout or something hard, for me, when I'm on the pavement, I'm like, oh man, and the conversations in my head is like, oh, this sucks. You can stop. You've gone far enough. And that's the lesser self. Whereas, in those hard moments, your heroic self could also be saying, one more step. You're stronger than you think you are. You're capable. Get to that stop sign or whatever it may be. So I think that's one of the first steps is I would encourage you to just start writing your thoughts down on paper and kind of seeing where the pattern goes. But then also just starting to recognize that conversation in your head and who's dominating the conversation. And I think that that's a good place to start, just to start your awareness of how your thoughts are patterned and where they're flowing.
I love that. And I don't want to get too much into this because we'll kind of talk about it later on with thoughts in the mind, but that's which thought is dominating, because so many people forget we have a choice for which thought dominates. Yeah. And it's like the auto understanding is this is a thought in my head, therefore it must be true. Yeah. No. And it's, but we'll get into that later. And that's something I'm actually very slow to respond to a lot of, like if it's a negative thing, if somebody is unkind or you will not hear from me immediately because my auto response is not nice. Right. And so I always take time. Because I know my auto responses, I'm always slower to respond. It may be a day or two before I respond. So don't think that it's because I caved. It's because I'm wanting to make sure that the correct response, the response that has wisdom in it, and not the one that just wants to go, hey, you know what I'm saying?
Right. So,
but we do have a choice. And if we would have more choices of what dominates, again, I think we would have better communication, better relationships, better so many things in personal life, all the things. So, okay, not going to get into that anymore because we can get into that later. All right. Regulating emotions. This is hard. This is hard. And for so many people, and I'm saying like, and when I'm telling you guys like people, I'm saying me too. Like I'm not immune. It's there's habits that have been formed, but that doesn't mean that. So, hey, we're with you guys. But regulating emotions, tell me about that.
Yeah, no, I always joke like when people say, "Who do you work with?" And I'm like, "Well, are you a person? Do you have a brain? Yeah, I can work with you." You know, everyone has to deal with this. No one's immune to it, like you said. So, managing your emotions. So, I think the biggest thing that has helped me with this is to name emotions. You know, you have to name it to tame it, but then you have to feel it to heal it is the next step, you know. And when you are able in those hard moments where you feel like an intense emotion and it feels like it's overcoming you, if you're able to name it and at least put a label on it, that for me anyway, helps create space between the emotion and who I am. And, you know, part of our work the work that I do personally, you know, with myself and with my clients has to do with ego. And, you know, anytime we're quick to anger, that's not your true self. That's your ego. Anytime you get defensive, that's your ego. And so part of that, I think, for me, that's helped me too, doing some of this ego work and just recognizing my ego is a way to just separate. And so the first step for me is name it to tame it. I even have an app on my phone. I think it's called How Do You Feel or How You Feel. But I get a notification and it pops up and I'm able to go and look at this wide range of emotions. Because a lot of times, like our emotions, we just think happy, sad, mad, all the top 5. When really if we could extend our vocabulary and understanding of all the different types of emotions we can feel, that's also really helpful to help that wide range of be specific of exactly how you feel. And then again, to carry on to that, maybe not in the moment, but later on, journaling on it, meditating on it, kind of thinking why you had those certain reactions, or maybe what triggered that emotion or that defensiveness from the ego, or it's work to unpack those things. And again, it just takes that intention. It's uncomfortable work. This inner work is some of the most uncomfortable work I've done in my life, and but it's also the most transformative. So if you're able to, start with naming your emotion and creating separation. I am not my emotion. That helps to kind of move the steps forward.
So I own the coffee trailer now, and we're in our 7th week. And in the beginning, I would be in there, and then we'd get real busy, but then we would slow down at certain times of the day. And consistently, Meredith, every day when it would slow down, I would start to get stressed. I would start to be like, what? And I didn't, and I all of a sudden didn't appreciate the busyness before. I didn't stop and go, man, that was great that we were busy earlier today. It's great that we did these sales earlier today, because all I could focus on was the stress in that moment. And because I'm big on self-reflection, after about 3 weeks in, I said, okay, wait a minute. This is a consistent feeling I'm having. We did well at this point. So why am I getting so stressed at this point? And I really had to sit. And so what I do is I just keep unwinding. I go, okay, here's this. And then I unwind again. And I go, okay, now here's the root of that. Now let's unwind again until I get to the very bottom. And the very bottom of it was this. Are you ready? I'm going to get vulnerable with you guys for a minute. Okay. If we're not busy at this time, what if people drive by and say, she's not busy, she's failing? It was an insecurity. It was a pride. And I had to get to the root of, why is this bothering me? And now whenever I start to get bothered, if my numbers are fine, but I'm bothered, it's a me problem. It's I have to fix an insecurity that I have. And so what if I fail? Do you know what I'm saying? Yes. So that's a personal life example for y'all of recognizing your emotions and and realizing where they're coming from. Therefore, I'm not saying that I don't always stress. I still have to, it still wants to creep in. But now that I know what the root is, I'm able to grab hold of it easier and talk myself down and go, Megan, this is something, and you know what it does, that self-reflection and that self-work, it shows you your weak spots that, like what you said, you can heal, you can grow it. And so is it uncomfortable? Yeah. Is it uncomfortable admitting to you guys that there's an insecurity, there's a pride issue? Yeah, it doesn't feel great. But the thing is, like you said earlier too, it's a superpower that we're able to get to the root. Therefore, eventually, the more habits I put in place of being intentional and grabbing hold of it, over time, it's going to be less and less and less. And if we're not busy, I'm just going to be like, whatever.
Yeah, I think that, you, first of all, thanks for sharing that. And I think you make a good point, like being able to recognize that and be self-aware, you're able to go to the root of the problem. But also the next step is like perspective shift. And so like by you noticing that at those certain times, there's power in noticing, okay, I'm insecure that outside people are going to think I'm failing. Whereas like maybe, you can shift that into, it's part of the process. It's it's patterns in your business. Like it's, if that time of day just happens to be a little bit slower, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think that that's another step too, is by giving yourself that space and recognizing it, then yes, now you can start to shift your perspective on it.
No, that's so good. Okay, so redirecting your focus. That's kind of what we just talked about, shifting your perspective. How would you say though, so redirecting focus, especially when it's not something you're used to doing, is or for people who have the repetitive thought where it won't leave them alone. I mean, it doesn't matter how many times you can have a saying on the wall that you know is going to shift your focus, and 5 minutes later your brain is like hammering the thought to get your focus. So how can we redirect our focus when we do have our tendency, our auto response is to be on loop?
Yeah. I'm going to mess the stats up on this, but I've recently come across this idea that, I think it's about 80% of our thoughts are repeated thoughts. So the same, like you mentioned, like we have these thoughts on loop and they repeat over and over and over again. And our repeated thoughts become our beliefs. And so it's so important to recognize those things. As far as training your focus, because just like any skill, podcasting, writing, shooting a soccer ball, just like those skills require repetition, so does maintaining and getting your focus. So once you're in those chaotic or tough situations, that's not the time to train your focus. It's technically too late in that moment. And so the way to train your focus is to do work outside of the sports arena, outside of the studio, outside of whatever performance space you may be in, and practice your focus through tools like meditation. And I'm a big believer in meditation. I've done research on meditation. I don't want to say I've been trained, but you do have to go through a process to learn how to do transcendental meditation, which is a TM is what it's called. It's powerful, like mantra-based meditation, but you don't have to be trained to do meditation.
Yeah.
Like you can literally take 1 minute of your day and start with 1 minute. And the practice of meditation is not some monk sitting on the summit of, the Himalayan mountains with their legs crossed. Like you don't have to be in this serene place. You can literally be sitting in a chair surrounded by people. The practice of meditation is being able to, in my opinion, close your eyes and notice your thoughts and have an anchor, whether that's a mantra, your breath, or if you don't like sitting still, you could do like a walking meditation. But the practice of meditation is noticing that your thoughts have wandered and then coming back to that anchor. So if you're using meditation and using your anchor as the breath, taking that 1 minute practice, noticing your thoughts wander, coming back to the inhale, exhale. And so that practice is then, after many, many repetitions, can be translated in those high pressure situations. When you're in those chaotic times, then you can go back to your practice, taking that deep inhale and exhale and coming back to the present moment, because that's really what it's about. Anytime you think about when you've been in flow or you've enjoyed or been present or with whatever you do, it's because you've been in the moment. Whenever we start to worry about the past or have anxieties about the future, you're out of the moment. And so coming back to the moment, that's what that practice takes. And so, focus can be trained. And so that's another tool that I hope teach people is, you can train your focus. It just takes practice, starting with 1 minute, going up to 5 minutes, going up to 20 minutes a day, and I've been meditating for years now, and some days I'll sit down and I can't, my thoughts are all over the place, and it doesn't feel like I meditated at all. And 20 minutes is up and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just keep going. I still feel like crap, but I'm going to keep going. The practice is good. The practice is bad. The practice is still practice. It's reps. But sometimes, I meditate and I go to a deep, dark, serene, beautiful place and come back out and I'm like, wow, man, I feel refreshed, know? So I think it's just with anything you want to be a master at. It just takes time, intention, practice.
So what I do, my meditation is like I'll do scripture and I'll speak scriptures over because I'll have these thoughts and so then I'll find a Bible verse that like speaks truth to that thought. And there was it was 2 weeks ago, I had like a lot of, I don't know what the deal was. I honestly, sorry men, but I think it really was just because of hormones. I was just anxious and anyway, so I could not, my thoughts just kept going. And so I am big on speaking scripture truth to it. And so every time I had this thought, Meredith, I just said the scripture. And then I was like getting to the point where I put the scripture on the back of my phone. Oh, he lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. And even and this is what I repeated over and over again. every time the thought came was, even when I walked through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid because you're close to me and your rod and your staff protect and comfort me. Because it's just like nervous anxiety. And so I just kept speaking that. And Meredith, I think people get discouraged when they have to meditate over and over again. Like, did I not do something? Like, is it, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Meredith, I had to speak that over my mind, like probably 10 times in one day. And at one point I was like, because I am faith-based, I was like, Lord, dang, like what? But you know what I also see in that, and like what you're talking about with, meditation, and because these are both forms of meditation. And so it is the practice of it. And what's cool is, because it can get discouraging for me when I'm like, this thought came so many times today and I had to speak truth to it so many times today. And I'm just like, but I'm stronger because of that.
Right.
And I just built a muscle in my brain because of that. And there's so much more. Yeah, you had to go through something, but the strength that came from it and the strength that came from repeating it is worth it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if we can see it as a positive and not just like feeling defeated, and you know what, Meredith? Probably going to have to speak some truth to myself a million more times in my lifetime. And it doesn't make us weak, guys. It doesn't make us less than, and it doesn't mean that we're not getting it right. It means that we're human and we have a brain that we have to constantly be speaking to.
All the time. I appreciate you bringing up too, there's different modes: meditation, prayer, walking, silent. I would encourage people out there interested in this, do some of your own research and figure out what works for you. But yeah, no, I agree that it's, you make a good point about it's about the habit of it. And this might segue into what we're going to talk about next, but changing and shifting your behavior, in my opinion, is one of the hardest things that you'll have to do. And so like for you in that story, you have this repeated thought that, may make you feel a certain way, but I love how you found a scripture to connect to and find comfort in, and also an anchor point, right? And that's part of it too. So, but like you said, it's going to continue. It's not going to happen in one day. It's going to happen day after day, week after week, and the practice that goes into that.
And I think that's why so many people keep trying so many different things, because if it doesn't work out the first time, then they're like, okay, well, that didn't work. Let's try this. That didn't work. Well, because you're only giving it so much time. And like what Meredith keeps talking about is, this is repetition. This is work. And when she keeps saying it is uncomfortable sometimes, that also goes into this. It's uncomfortable. You have to now face okay, this isn't working. No, it is working. I'm putting in effort. I'm putting in time. I'm building that muscle. So don't give up. And I would say, Meredith, how much time would you say somebody should give to put in the work and to build that habit before going, this isn't working?
How much time? Oh, man. I would, first of all, like, you make a good point real quick on, our brain naturally wants to chase the bright, shiny thing, and it doesn't want to sit and do the simple thing over and over again. And so we're trying to cook a crock pot meal in a microwave generation, and I think that as far as time-wise, I would encourage you to find one, maybe two tools, like meditation tool 1, journaling tool 2, and just dedicate this a chunk of time that is achievable for you. So if that's 5 minutes a day, okay, commit to 5 minutes a day for the next 14 days. If you think you can commit 10 minutes a day, do that for the next 14 days. But it's like you said, we're in such a world where we're chasing all these different things, these different solutions, when really the answer's already within you. It's just your ability to like sit with it and be committed to that 5 or 10 minutes a day. I really don't think it takes more than that to start. So that's what I would encourage.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about how the brain works. There is something that is called the rider, the elephant, and the path. Kind of break that down for me.
Yeah, so this idea, the rider, the elephant, and the path, it aligns with our subconscious and our conscious mind. And Jonathan Haidt is the researcher on this. He has, I would recommend a book called Switch. It goes into this idea more deeply. There's also a great 2-minute YouTube video, but the rider, the elephant in the path is important to understand when you're trying to shift your behavior, because a lot of times, like you kind of mentioned, we think something's wrong with us when we keep having this repeated thought. And there is nothing wrong with you. Our brain is naturally goes to a negative bias because of our ancestors, right? For survival, really our brain doesn't know the difference between being chased by, a saber-tooth tiger versus getting ready for a game. That fear is still the same within us. So understanding the rider, the elephant in the path is important. The rider represents our conscious brain, and this is our working brain. And this part of our brain we have easier access to. It's like our working brain, our choices, our critical thinking, what we use day to day. And although it's easier access to the rider, it only accounts for about 5 to 10% of our life. And so for those listening out there, I would encourage you to imagine this. I want you to imagine an elephant and the rider is on top. Okay, so the rider is just about 5 to 10%, but the rider helps direct, right? Because we have easier access to that. We can kind of have an idea of where we want to go. The elephant represents our subconscious mind. And our subconscious mind is much deeper. It's much harder to access. That's where our beliefs are held, our fight or flight response, our intuition, our habits, and this is our values. All these different things that are really deep-rooted and important to us is part of our subconscious mind. And although it's harder to access, it accounts for 90 to 95% of our life. Wow. Which is crazy. And so when I explain this to people, it's important that we have the rider to help direct it. But in the work that we do, we work on the subconscious. And if you can imagine, again, those listening, that rider on top of the elephant, I want you to imagine that rider hopping off of that elephant and trying to push the elephant. That elephant's not going anywhere. And so a lot of times when we're trying to shift behavior, we're trying to push this elephant in the direction we want to go. When really we have to motivate the elephant through feeling, through emotion, through desire. And so the work that we do through journaling, visualization, meditation, all these different things, those can help us motivate our elephant going down the path. And so those two work together because, yes, our rider is important because we need to have direction so that we can lead the elephant. But if the elephant doesn't want to go and it's not motivated, it's not going anywhere. So by tapping into your emotion, by doing that uncomfortable inner work and really seeing what you really want, that can help move both of them, the rider and the elephant, in the direction you want to go.
Interesting. That is so interesting. You know what is the 5 to 10% control over daily? That's so crazy how... See what I'm saying, guys? This is why you have to be patient with your brain. This is why you can't just give up. That's wow. So, okay. Let's go into understanding the brain's natural limits. So the brain's default is to protect and conserve energy, often by limiting potential. So what are some brain tricks that we can do?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, we have fear that's very innate and the same as caveman or cavewoman. We have this fear, whether we're getting ready for a presentation or a big game, that would probably be similar to the fear that caveman or cavewoman felt if they couldn't find food that night, right? And so if we can help unlock and understand that our brain's main function is to help us survive. It wants today to look a lot like yesterday because we survived. And so it's naturally going to limit us and stop us when maybe we feel a tinge of discomfort or, we think that something's not safe. In the athletic arena, I use the example of sprints, right? A lot of sports require some sort of physical cardio movement, and if you're doing sprints, they absolutely suck, right? And so when you're doing those sprints, your brain is limiting you, saying, okay, that's enough. I feel pain, when really you can push further. And it's all about how you formulate your beliefs and your thought patterns to help move beyond that limit.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, so the thoughts and the reticular activating system filters experiences based on focus and thoughts. So go in, like, kind of expand on that for us.
Sure. So, like I mentioned, the rider, the elephant, and the path, really, that's kind of how our brain works. It's our subconscious and conscious. It's kind of these what may appear to be these unseen things or unfelt things, but are a part of our brain and how we operate. The reticular activating system is actually, it's part of our brain. It's a bundle of nerves at the base of our brain, at the top of our spinal cord, and it acts as like a filter to things that are important. So although you and I are talking to each other right now in this room, not really because it's carpeted and soundproof, but if you're listening on the road or wherever you're listening, it's likely you're taking in upwards of 2 million pieces of data at any given time. And so when you have a focus, your reticular activating system shifts to give you that focus of what's important to you. So you and I are talking. My focus is on you, not necessarily the stimulus around the room, but I know that this conversation is important. Whereas maybe for you, if you're driving or you're at home, if you stop for a minute, pause, and you kind of hear the hum of the refrigerator, or you notice the whirring of the fan, those are all pieces of data that come to you that your reticular activating system's taking in, but it's like, oh, it's not really that important right now. So why it's important when you're trying to shift behavior is because, our thoughts are a director of what we see in our outside world. And so our reticular activating system finds that focus, and it finds proof for us in our outside world. And so I like to use this example because it, people can relate to this. So let me ask you, Megan, have you in your family ever gotten a new car before?
Yes.
Okay. What was the color and make of that car?
So this is perfect. This is what's coming to mind. My first car was a Mustang.
Okay.
After I got a Mustang, my younger brother noticed every single Mustang, and it was almost a game where he would just start noticing them.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So before you got that, maybe you did, if it's like a dream car, maybe you noticed it, but your family gets a new car, and then you notice it everywhere. And before that, those Mustangs were probably definitely on the road.
Yeah.
But your focus wasn't there. But when you got that focus, you're like, okay, this is important to me. Your brain, your reticular activating system said, okay, this is important to Megan, this Mustang. So then you're looking for it everywhere in your outside world, which is crazy. And so that's so important to know as you're training your brain, because if you're saying thoughts to yourself like, oh man, I am no good at this, I suck, why am I even out here? Then your reticular activating system is going to find proof of that in your outside world. Whereas if you're saying things, oh, I'm the greatest, I'm so capable, I can do these things, then it's going to find proof of the outside world.
That's fascinating.
I know. It's crazy.
What? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm pausing for a minute because I'm literally processing that. So let me just verbally process that. So what we tell ourselves, the brain will find more of. Actively find more of. Like it wants to actively find more of.
Exactly. Wow. Yes. So
guys, this should be like key unlocked. This should be like treasure chest unlocked for a lot of you, because it's the power of our, wow, that is so wild. I'm adding this to my toolbox. I don't like this is because I am a high performer, very self-critical. And so because I am so self-critical, now that this is why I love these conversations. Because when you understand the root of things, it is so much easier to grab a hold of and move forward. And now that I know, oh, shoot, I'm hearing all the critic, not that people are being that,
right,
but my filter is now hearing things as criticism because I am a critic in my own head. This is mind-blowing for me right now, guys. Man, again, treasure chest unlocked. Okay, so let's move on because otherwise I'll focus on that for a hot minute. Okay, so story we tell ourselves, what I just said, what we tell ourselves, and having this stat that came from I don't know where you got it, but it's 60,000 internal thoughts daily.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that. And for somebody with ADHD like me, it's probably triple that. So
and females have higher amounts than men too.
Yes. And so self-talk shaping that. So what can we do, Meredith, in the moments that we are, for self-talk, in the moments for all of that, what are some real-time tips and tricks that we can start speaking to ourselves, even if it's something as basic as you're kind. You're saying that to yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or something like super, it doesn't have to be like a paragraph to yourself.
Right. Oh, no.
So give us some tips and tricks in the moment, like on the court. Because on the court, like I've seen it just having 3 kids, on the court or in work performance, in relationship performance as a partner. What can we do in the moments for self-talk?
Sure.
And I know that sounds like, well, self-talk, but for people who it's not that easy, what are tips and tricks?
Or, people think self-talk and they're like, oh, I don't talk to myself as you're talking to yourself, right?
Yeah, right.
So one thing there's multiple things that you can do with self-talk. Again, I'm going to go back to journaling. I think that's a great default, just to kind of write out and maybe think about, okay, how does my best self act, think, speak, and get those ideas down on paper. But in the moment, and I think, again, a lot of the training we do has to happen outside the moment so that you're prepared for the moment. But I like to take clients and athletes through the difference between self-talk, like maybe destructive or critical self-talk, and trying to shift it to functional self-talk, not positive self-talk, because sometimes that can feel really fake and phony. And so functional self-talk is more of maybe instructing. So as a soccer coach, I encourage my players, like let's say we have a penalty kick. And actually I had a conversation with a player last week on this. And every time she in practice, she will just bury this penalty kick. It's like a free throw in basketball. It's kind of like if you get it, it's a great opportunity to score for your team. And so she does so well in practice. And then she had some opportunities in games and she just missed. And so I talked to her about it. I said, what's the script going on in your head in these moments? She said, I'm just telling myself not to miss. And that happens all the time. And just like we mentioned with the reticular activating system, and I'm a big universe gal too. So, if you're saying don't miss, the universe just hears miss. And so instead of saying don't miss, don't mess up, don't choke, instead, can you change it to something more functional? So back to the example with the penalty kick, instead of saying don't miss, maybe you could say aim for the back corner. And so that's so much more functional and a way to focus on what you want to do in the positive instead of what you don't want to do in the negative. And so although that shift may be really hard to do, especially after years and years of saying don't miss, that's something that I always encourage athletes to do, is trying to shift into something a little bit more functional, so that maybe you're just instructing yourself a little bit more into the productive results that you want.
Okay. No, that's good. Wow, we got a lot. There is so much. I don't know if anybody's come to the conclusion yet, but our thoughts have there's a lot to our thoughts. And it's so important to not just let them have a free-for-all, And I think we do that because, again, like what I said earlier, the auto responses, it's there, so it must be true. Or it's there, so this must just be the right way. And it's not. So anyway, okay. So building confidence. Let's talk about that real quick. So confidence being the outcome of a deeper internal journey. So what are some key takeaways to build self-confidence, to just kind of build upon that?
Yeah. Confidence is a really interesting term to me because it's very arbitrary. Like my version of confidence is different than your version of confidence. And to me, though, confidence is really just having that self-assurance. And you can't, in my opinion, you can't just like build confidence. The best of the best in the world didn't just wake up one day feeling confident. It's something that they have to continually work at. And to me, there's so many more steps before you feel confident from my experience and my research and my work with people. And it first starts with just building self-trust. So if you want to be more confident, and I'm just because it's an easy example, if you want to be a more confident runner, right, and you want to feel confident in that role, then building self-trust may look like, okay, I'm going to commit to a 10-minute run every day this week. And so if you commit to that 5 days a week and you show up for yourself 5 days a week, then you're building your self-trust and you're building and saying, hey, I can do this. This is something I can do. It's something I am doing. And so by the end of those 5 days, if you look back from the beginning, it's possible you probably feel different just because you followed through on the commitments you set to yourself, which again is a very intimate thing that nobody else really knows, much like the conversation going on in our head. But if you can commit to these daily things to build the person you want to become, that's going to build your self-trust. And then after those 5 days, maybe you go another 5 days and say, I'm going to commit to maybe 15 minutes of a run. And you keep going, then you start to believe in yourself and you build that self-belief. And from there, that's kind of where you get that confidence. And let me back all the way up. Maybe on day 0, you have to start with the courage to do it. You have to start with the courage to set your sights on something or someone who you want to become. And then that's when the process starts. So courage, self-trust by building and committing and following through on your self-commitments, putting a notch on the scoreboard for who you want to become, and then continually working to then build self-belief. And then after all the work, you get self-confidence.
And courage doesn't mean there's not fear.
Oh, yeah.
Courage means you chose what you know to be good over fear. So don't feel like you're not courageous because there is that level of fear. When you choose it, just like Meredith said, when you choose what you know is good, when you choose what you know is best for you in spite of fear, that is where your courage comes in. And so I am so with you. Before we close out, let's talk about developing a reset routine for anybody who is which it's not just anybody, it's literally everybody. I say anybody, but we're all at some point in our every day going through performing, whether it's job, school, athletics, or whatever it is. So for everybody, what is a good reset routine?
So when I take clients and athletes through this, it's usually about a 30-minute workshop. So I'm going to slice it down to about 3 minutes. But to me, what's very important when I'm working with athletes, and really this can go for any type of performance, whether you're a keynote speaker, podcaster, businesswoman, businessman, whatever you may have to perform in. The first step is always, for me, is encouraging, okay, can we go back and kind of create a highlight reel? When are some moments that you felt the best, like playing, performing, whatever it may be? And kind of just remind yourself of those times where you achieved or conquered the thing. And then from there, I take clients through creating a reset word or phrase from that experience. So if I think about me as a goalkeeper, it wasn't even a game. I think of a specific practice. I happened to get hours before go through a breakup. And so I go to this practice just super angry and upset. And I just kind of made the choice to just put all that and channel that into this practice. And I practice lights out. I was like flying through the air. I remember those moments. And my coach even said anything like, wow, Meredith, you were just on it today. I'm like, oh, I know. But I just remember channeling that. But emotions and events aside, I just remember those moments. I remember the specific drill that we were doing. And so for me in that moment, I was just so focused. I was in the moment. I was present. I was channeling my energy. And so maybe a reset word or mantra for me would be present. Yeah. And so then with that, I encourage athletes and the clients I take this process through, create some sort of small, quick motion, something quick. So also as a goalkeeper, a lot of times when a mistake was made, I'd be picking a soccer ball out of the back of the net and, because we got scored on. And not that it's, it's a team sport, but, it's just always hard on the goalkeeper because you're the last person. So for me, in those moments, I would roll the ball up. I would adjust my shin guards. I would do 2 claps and just kind of move forward and encourage my team. And so that's something that, just a quick snap, clap, swipe of the forehead, the females I work with, sometimes they just adjust their ponytail, just something quick just to kind of reset, say the word. Oh, and also paired with a deep breath to kind of regulate your nervous system. Deep breath, say the word, quick motion. And then move on to the next play. So it's a process. And again, it's something that you do once, it's not going to maybe make a difference. You do over and over and over again and practice in those hard moments. That's when it's going to make a difference. And so, that's another part of this work that can be really challenging. And I know we've touched on it. It's not a one and done deal. This is something that you have to continually work at. It's something that I continually work at, as a person, as a coach, as a wife, as a mother. I'm constantly trying to better myself and use these same tools. So that's just a little nugget of how you could maybe try and do your reset routine.
No, that's so good. Meredith, I appreciate you coming on and walking us through this. And if anybody wants to dive deeper into this, if something's really was, they're listening, they're like, oh, I need to hear more about that, where can they do that?
Yeah. So, you can go to brickwalltraining.com and kind of see a little bit more about the services I offer. I do a monthly newsletter, Wisdom for Warriors, and it's a lot of topics on there right now, just over the things that we've talked about and beyond. But also on my website, you can set up a discovery call. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, at Brickwall Training. This is something I'm really passionate about, because we talked about at the beginning too. It's not just in sports, it's not just in school, it's not just in work, but it's life. And I'm so passionate about this work because it really builds life skills and your resiliency and your mental strength to get through tough times. And so it's something I'm very passionate about. I'd love to talk more and possibly work with you or your athlete to help establish these foundational tools to help you perform in life.
That's so good. Meredith, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.